Welcome back to RGO Photo. I'm Chris. When I bought my Nikon D600, I needed a lens. So I did some internet research and I ended up buying the Nikon AFS NIKKOR 24-85 f3.5-4.5G. It's got vibration reduction, as you see right there, and it also has a switch for manual auto and manual focus. So when you're in manual auto, you can override the autofocus if you're not getting focus and get yourself close and probably pick up focus again. So what I'd like to do is show you some images taken with the lens on the D600. So to start, what I'm going to do is share some photos I've taken with the 24-85, and then we're going to put the 24-85 on my little test chart here at 3 different focal lengths on 3 different apertures, and we're going to do that against the 24-120 by Nikon. What I did was, this is the lens, the 24-120 is the one I had my heart set on, but I bought this instead. Now I have both, so now I need to test them and see which one I actually do like better, because the advantage of this one is it's cheaper. I could resell this one and get my money back, and it's also a good deal smaller than the 24-120. So if the 100, say the 85-120 isn't very good on this, then what's the point of having the extra focal length if this is just as good from 24-85? So that's what we're going to see there. So what I'd like to do is start by showing some images, and this is probably going to take a while, so buckle in. I got to jump in here, and I hope you did buckle in. Most of the photos I took for this video were pre-calibration. I have now since recalibrated or calibrated these lenses, 2 lenses in question, to my Nikon D600. If you haven't seen the other videos, I'm pretty sure I have a mirror that isn't square in there because the central focus point is slightly off. I can tell when I shoot at a post, if I center the focal point, it'll sometimes miss. If I move in my case, if I move it to the left, your right, and refocus, it nails the post. So I've had to recalibrate or calibrate these lenses. So the autofocus fine tune on Nikon. The 24-85 I ended up at a -7, and the 24-120 I ended up at a -13. So considering the camera goes to -20, -7's a third of the way there, and -13's over halfway there. So decent correction. So both lenses have sharpened up, and so I've had to redo most of this video. I just realized that coincidentally I'm wearing the same shirt as before, so I had to reshoot all the test board results. So everything I shot on my test board I reshot since I calibrated, and I've took a few more example photos, but most of these first photos are going to be pre-calibration, and the focus of this video I would like to be on the 24-85 f3.5-4.5G VRED and all the other letters that we have on this lens. The Nikon 24-120 f4 here is simply for some comparison's sake, because you might be interested in one or the other of these lenses, as I am. So eventually I got to make a decision as to which one to keep, and doing a video like this will help me with that decision. So what I'd like to do is start off with just example photos from this lens, the 24-85, pre-calibration, and we'll move on from there. So right here, just got this shot of it's a large, I'm really not sure what the apparatus is, but anyway, the focus of this photo is to look at the background blur, and is it pleasing with this fence line back here, the tree leaves. You know, this is a pretty tough with the sunrise hitting it, hitting these leaves and lighting them up. How's that background blur? Next, we have this large sculpture, the Continuum. It's the Julie Penrose Fountain down in America the Beautiful Park in Colorado Springs. My focal point was back here. So as you can see, pretty nice and crisp. Here we have a sunflower, and part of the reason I knew I had a focus issue with the camera was because of this. If you look right here, the flower is not very well in focus, even though that was the focal point. But behind, look, just behind, this is nice and clear back here. Nice and crispy, nice and sharp. So that's how I knew I had a focus issue, was because there were multiple times where the thing I focused on was not in focus, but the thing slightly behind it was. So again, moving on to another sunflower. In this case, we got good focus in there. How's that background blur? Now we got a portrait. This is Bolero, the llama. So we are nice and sharp right in there. I should have had maybe a little more shutter speed, but it's fairly crisp right in there, even though he was chewing. But with the 24-85, this is kind of the stuff that if you give it a complicated background like this is a mixture of aspen and pine, and some of the pine are dead, some of them are not. You see the background blur, and that's got to be over a half mile away from the llama. So that's the background blur that sometimes can be a little squirrely. Sometimes it's not, sometimes it is. Look at the pine back here. Not bad. Here's Cooper. Now in this case, the background blur looks great. Almost looks like a green screen, like Cooper is standing in front of a green screen picture. But zoom in here and you can see pretty sharp in there. Go back to Bolero. Again, now the background is just fine. No issues at all. Nice and sharp. Go back to Cooper here. Here's our background. The pine trees are kind of a tough background to deal with. They're they show a lot of light and can create some kind of craziness back there, but looks pretty good. Go in here on Cooper's face. You can see these bugs. I needed a little more shutter speed to freeze these bugs. They're a little blurry. These closer ones, the ones in the back are going to be blurry, but how's that background through the pine there? That's not bad. Now here's just a shot of the landscape. We are at f11 on this one. Look, you can see pretty good detail back there. We got a fence post. Foreground looks good. Background looks good. That dot is on the sensor. I have since cleaned the sensor, but that's what that is. Focal point down in here. Did you see this looks like slightly soft, and this may be a little sharper, because I bet you I focused right here and it actually focused a little off to the side. But that's a nuance with this camera, not the lens. Here's a nice shot down through here. Here's our focal point. Pretty sharp. Background looks pretty good. I'm not hating on that. Here we are a little more open. I focused right here on that flag. So you can see it's nice and sharp through here. And the foreground's a little blurrier. Background's a little blurrier still. Back here, we almost got round bokeh balls. Pretty close. And right here I did a black and white but kept the sky. Not bad. Alright, so all of those photos were on the 24 to 85, so we'll just call it the 85. And now let me do some new examples with both lenses calibrated to the camera, and we're going to do these side by side because I tried to take the same shot. So here we got a flower, and I do notice that we got the 85 on the left, 120 on the right, that the 120, I need to do a stop slower, or a third of a stop slower, one click as I have my camera set up, to expose more similarly. If I expose them to the center of the meter, the 120 is darker than the 85. But anyway, here we got a lovely flower. We got a flying ant or something right there. Okay, so here we are here, and the reason I could tell these apart is the background is maybe slightly busier, just a little wonky compared to the 120, but this is our focal point. Nice and sharp in both of them. But you see what I mean in the background? It's just a little busier over here, to me, to my eye anyway. It's just a little bit different. Slightly different rendering back there. But let's go up front a little bit for a little foreground. Looks just fine. Okay, I shot this because it had some depth to it. It's kind of a rundown looking sunflower, but let's look at the background blur. And again, I can tell the slight difference if you look, especially if you look just down in this grass. It's just a little different than here. I think the 120 just has a slightly more pleasing background blur, but this was our focal point. So both of them put that in focus real nice. Real nice, especially since they're calibrated here. So let's take a look at this guy in the foreground. How does that look? And then let's look at this guy in the back. Almost seems like the 85 is focused back there a little better. Look at this guy back in here. Either of them more pleasing. You kind of see how this one maybe on the 120 side it kind of blurs a little more, or maybe a little more smoothly, but it's not much, very little. And last example, same sunflower, but this was our focal point right here. You look at them both, nice and in focus on both. Lovely. Let's go up to this sunflower back here. Again, same kind of difference, like this one's got some weirdness down here. So in that case, I almost feel like the 85 is a little better looking right there. Let's go to this old focal point right there. Just a little bit different in how they render. So those are example pics. So if you liked the way those pictures looked, and you know that with a better monkey behind the camera than me, that this lens will perform even better, because some of those are just example pics, some of them are actual ones I tried on. So hopefully you could tell the difference between the two. If you can't, then anybody would probably make this lens look better. So if you liked those photos and you saw the potential of this lens, you could probably quit watching now. So that's the difference, ever so slight. When I look at images, the only thing I can really look at is I go to the background and I look for slightly more busy, slightly more, it's just different. It's a different look. So it almost seems like the 120 is maybe slightly smoother in the background than the 85, but that's where you got to be looking at the front portion of the, the focal plane. Everything looks very similar on them both. The color rendition, everything looks very similar. So now let's go to the test board, and I'd like to show you, we're going to start at 24 millimeters. So let me show you an example photo at 24 millimeters between the two. So here's our example at 24 millimeters. If you notice, the right hand side is slightly smaller than it is on the left hand side on this lens, and that's because the 24 to 120, I had to back up a little bit to get it to focus. So it does not have, or I should say the 85 has a shorter minimum focus distance than the 120 does. And it was literally 2 inches. I had to move the camera back to get the shot, or to get the camera to focus. So if you look at the background, you can see it's slightly just different than the 120. And you'll see this is pre-calibration. So you'll see the 85 didn't nail focus, but the 120 did. But again, pre-calibration. So now let's go to the test board. Here we are, 24mm f4, 85 is on the left, 120 is on the right. Clearly sharper on the left there. Much sharper in the wording. Sharper in the corner. Maybe the low right on the 120 is better. They were both bad. Definitely sharper on the left. So let's look at the barrel distortion on both. They're both pretty strong. Slight vignetting on both. Maybe a little more on the 85. And also of note that the 85 will go to 3.5 at this focal length. I just put them both on f4 for the comparison. Okay, f5, 24mm. Pretty darn sharp in the middle on both. I think you got to give the wording here to the 85. I think you got to give this bill to the 85. So it looks like the 85's got the center. Go around the horn real quick. Definitely better on the 85 down there. And both are pretty good up top, but this looks to be slightly sharper, especially when we look at that UPC. Let's go 7.1. Both of them got real sharp in the middle there. Real good, but man, that 85 really sharpened up nice. I think the 120's got this corner. 120's got that corner. Ooh, that's a close corner. This almost looks better on the 85, but this looks better on the 120. Might have to call that corner a draw or something. And I think this goes to the 85. I think. Depends on how far. Here, definitely the 85. Here, the 85. The extreme corner looks like maybe the 120. So here's our example pic for 50mm. We got the 85 on the left and the 120 on the right. This is pre-calibration. This example photo is pre-calibration. So you see the 85 missed slightly there in the middle, but nice and sharp right back here. So that's been my problem with the pre-calibrated photos. But how's the background blur? Kind of this area and this area is the only thing I can really tell the difference between them. Just looks a little busier here than here. Go back here to this roof line. I mean, they're just so similar otherwise. So going to the test board. Okay, so the 85 on the left is at 4.2 and the 120 is at f4. This is the maximum aperture at 50mm on the 85. Looks like the 120 maybe it's slightly better in this wording. Looks like it's better on this bill. And looks like it's better down here. So the 120 looks like we got the center there. Probably I like at least the contrast on the 85 a lot better there. They were both slightly blurry. I feel like maybe the 85 there. Definitely the 85 in that corner. definitely the 120 in this corner. So going to f5. Both of them are, man, they're sharp. Sharp in the center. This looks a touch sharper than this, but man, they're both so good right now at f5. Definitely the 120 there. 120 there. The 120 there, or I mean, excuse me, the 85 here. Maybe the 85, maybe. Look at the UPC. Boy, those are very, very similar. Go to the extreme corner. Extreme corner goes to the 120. So real close there at f5. Real good showing. 50mm 7.1. Boy, they both look really good here going into the middle. Boy, if I had to just give it to one, I'd say maybe the 120. The words are so good on both of these. I think the 120's got the corners here. Definitely. Looks like the 120 is better here, but tough to say down there. Again, another really good corner. They're both just looking really good. The 85 seems to struggle just a little bit in this extreme corner, but they look real good down there. Both UPC symbols look real good. So for our 85mm pick, I didn't do the greatest job on getting the same framing. So either of the backgrounds look different enough to complain about, or foreground, or anything else. Again, when I expose the same, the 85 is slightly brighter than the 120. Okay, we're at f4.5 on the 85 because that's where it goes to. That's its maximum aperture at 85mm. So we're maxed out over here on the 85. Going into the middle here, and we're at f4 on the 120. So it looks like the center's a little, looks better there than there, but this looks sharper than there. Let's go to the wording right there. It's a little better there. And this is definitely better here on that dollar bill, on the $10. But this looks like it's probably better over here. So you could call that a draw. Let's run around these corners. I feel like the corner's better there on the 85. Maybe a little better down here. I think that royal flush is definitely clearer. 85 there for sure. And I think the 120 gets that corner. So let's go to f5. Alright, f5 here. Zoom into the Zen Deutschmark. It's a bit sharper over here on the 120. But that doesn't look sharper on the 120. The wording is sharper. This bill is sharper. How about this tiny wording over here? Oh, it looks better over here. So again, it seems like it depends on what part of the frame we're looking at. That was pretty close. I think the 85's got that corner. 85's been having this corner. And I think the 120's got that corner. And here at 85mm, looks like we got some pin cushion going on. Looks like the 85 has a little more than the 120. Both are easily correctable. There's profiles in Lightroom and probably every other editing software. 7.1 on the aperture. Going into the middle here. Real close on both. Go up to that wording. Boy, real good on both. I'm splitting hairs, I think the 120 is a little sharper here in the center. Let's go around the horn real quick. 85's got it here in that top right. Looks like the 120 in the bottom right. Down in this extreme corner, maybe the 120? I don't know. No, I think the 85's got that corner too. Boy, they're both real good, but when you go to that extreme corner, the 120 is a little bit better in that extreme corner. But when you look out, look how extremely up in the corner that is, as well as down here on this guy. When you go into this mid corner area, they're both pretty darn good. 85 over here for sure. So all in all, what'd you think? Not a bad lens. I think the only thing it doesn't have going for it is the background blur is a little goofy sometimes, given the right situation. Sometimes. So most of the time, I don't have any problems at all with the background blur. But now I got a tough decision as to which one do I go for. This one, the 120 had a really weak 50 before I calibrated it, 50mm range. But now its 50mm is actually very strong. Whereas this one, according to my notes, kind of cleaned house at 24mm. And then in the bigger apertures, f4.5 and f5 at 85mm, it really owned the corners. So its center wasn't quite as good. Real good showing here for this lens. Great budget option. So anyway, both lenses are so much better post-calibration than they were previous. Hope you liked this video. If you did, give us a thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button down there. And as always, thanks for watching.